I am Dr. Silas Mordaunt, Associate Professor of Literature. I am told that in the current academic climate, one's value is measured not by the depth of one's research, but by the breadth of one's digital footprint. It is a humiliating metric, a requirement to perform one's intellect in the town square for the amusement of passers-by, but I shall comply. I will say this once, and I will not repeat it. Do not expect enthusiasm. I am here to perform a clinical dissection, and if that is not what you came for, the recommended course of action is to leave. We are gathered to examine William Shakespeare's The Tempest. To the sentimental amongst us, it is a play of reconciliation and magic. To the analyst, it is something far more chilling. My thesis is this: the island in The Tempest is the first laboratory of the administrative state. Prospero is the supreme architect of systems, who does not merely govern a territory, but manufactures otherness itself to justify a totalizing institutional grip on reality. We shall proceed with the autopsy. We begin with a wreck. The opening storm is frequently dismissed as a mere theatrical flourish, a bit of sensationalism to wake the groundlings. This is a profound misunderstanding. The storm is a calculated state of exception. In the tradition of political theology, the state of exception is the precise moment when normal laws are suspended to make way for a new, often more brutal reality. On that vessel we witness the literal drowning of verticality. The king, the duke, the councillor, figures who represent the apex of European order, are suddenly reduced to screaming biological specimens. Listen to the boatswain as he rebukes the king's advisers. "What cares these roarers for the name of king?" This is the first othering of the play. The ocean does not recognize titles, bloodlines, or divine right. To the sea, a king is merely a buoyant obstacle, if he's lucky, that is. Perhaps he sinks to the bottom like the rest of us. Prospero requires this wreck. He must strip these men of their social armor before they touch his shore. He is clearing the ontological framework of the old world to prepare it for his own. The old laws are at the bottom of the sea, perhaps with the king. The vacuum is open, and as we know, power demands a new syntax to fill the silence. The vacuum left by the storm is instantly filled, but with language rather than soldiers or steel. Consider Prospero's first interaction with Miranda. He tells her, "I have done nothing but in care of thee." This is a masterpiece of institutional gaslighting. He's installing a curated history. He chooses what she remembers, he chooses when she remembers it, and he chooses how she feels about the trauma of their exile. By controlling the past, he renders the subject entirely predictable. Prospero's art is the ability to edit reality in real time. He treats the island as a closed loop, a lab environment where every variable is under his thumb. He says to Miranda, "The hour's now come, the very minute bids thee ope thine ear." This is an imperative syntax. He is synchronizing her consciousness with the island's operational clock. But an administrative system is only as effective as its error handling. To maintain this perfect logical structure, Prospero requires a scapegoat, a point of friction that he can blame for every failure of his own design. He needs a necessary monster. Every system of order requires a waste product. In Prospero's laboratory, that byproduct is Caliban. The master describes him as a freckled whelp, hag-born, not honoured with a human shape. We must see past the poetic insults. This is a formal act of categorical redaction. Prospero needs Caliban to be vile so that his own art appears civilized by comparison. Caliban is the friction that proves the machine is under tension. When Prospero declares him a born devil on whose nurture can never stick. He is justifying the transition from education to enslavement. In the logic of the institution, the other must always be framed as a physical or sexual threat to justify his permanent incarceration. Caliban represents the brute weight of the colony, the heavy labor, the wood fetching, the physical fact that someone must suffer for the island to function. But as any efficient administrator knows, you cannot run a system on fear and iron alone. The master still requires a more sophisticated instrument, one who will not enforce his will from the chain, but will enforce it from what he mistakes for devotion. So if Caliban is the body of the island's labor, Ariel is perhaps its nervous system and the more dangerous servant for it. Prospero keeps Ariel in chains of debt rather than iron. He constantly reminds the spirit of the cloven pine, from which he was rescued, asking, "Dost thou forget from what a torment I did free thee?" This is the hallmark of a sophisticated institution. The subject is made to feel that their servitude is a form of gratitude. Ariel is free to do exactly what he is told. And in exchange, he is promised a freedom, a true freedom, that's always just one more task away. Where Caliban must be beaten into compliance, Ariel performs his own regulation, which is precisely why he is more useful and more thoroughly imprisoned. The model prisoner who identifies with the system so completely that he becomes its most effective enforcer requires no cage at all. And, of course, we must address the third subject of the island, Miranda herself. She is the most successfully administered subject on the island, the only one conditioned from birth, with no prior self to suppress, so thoroughly shaped by the system that she believes her father's walls are the horizon of the world. Prospero has kept her in a state of careful ignorance for 12 years to preserve her value as political currency. When Ferdinand arrives, Prospero sees a merger. Miranda is the bridge that allows Prospero to re-enter European society. Her purity is a brand identity maintained for the sake of the transaction. She is the prototype for the ideal subject, compassionate, obedient, and incapable of questioning the master's narrative because she has no vocabulary for dissent. She loves her warden and calls her cage a kingdom. If Caliban carries logs because he is a slave, Ferdinand carries them to prove he is a master. Prospero subjects the young prince to a temporary, sanitized version of Caliban's life. But Ferdinand's labor has a point. It is a test of character, a trial of love. In the Mordaunt taxonomy, we recognize this as the internship phase of the administrative elite. The system claims that labor is a test of worth, but it only offers the test to those it already intends to promote. Ferdinand says, "The mistress which I serve quickens what's dead and makes my labors pleasures." This is the ultimate victory of the administrator, when the subject begins to find pleasure in their own regulation. The labor is identical to Caliban's, yet the category of the laborer determines the outcome entirely. One's a beast of burden, the other is a future duke being broken in. So we've dealt with the system of subjects. Let us have a look, briefly, at the machinery that holds them in place. Of course, the most profound layer of that machinery is the syntax itself. Prospero's greatest colonial achievement was teaching Caliban how to think within the parameters of the master's tongue. Caliban's most famous indictment, "You taught me language, and my profit on it is I know how to curse." Most critics hear this as a scream of rebellion. I hear it as a confession of total defeat. To curse in your master's language is still to validate your master's tools. You can scream at the bars of the cage, but if the bars are constructed from the very words you use to define your existence, you are trapped in an ontological loop. By opposing imposing his grammar on this monster. Prospero ensures that even Caliban's hatred is expressed through the medium of Prospero's culture. The subject is given a mouth, but denied a sovereign thought. Before the other can be effectively managed, the territory must also be named. To Caliban, the island has no names. It has properties. He speaks of fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile, a living geography of utility and essence. To the Europeans, a place does not truly exist until it has been titled, claimed, and pinned to a map. Mapping is the first step of extraction. You cannot tax what you cannot locate. You cannot police what you have not gridded. Every repetition of the phrase "my island" reinforces a legal fiction through sheer iteration. This mapping extends to the inhabitants. Caliban is named slave, monster, earth. These are more like coordinates. They tell the system exactly where to place him in the hierarchy. Once the map is complete, there's nowhere left to hide. The subject is pinned to the page like a biological specimen. Prospero's control is maintained through the panopticon. Ariel is the omnipresent eye. Whether he appears as a nymph of the sea or a harpy, his primary function is to ensure that there is no private space on the island. Every whisper of treason, every tear shed in secret, is recorded and reported back to the master's cell. When the subjects believe they are alone, they are most transparent. Prospero uses this intelligence to gaslight his enemies, appearing to know their inmost thoughts, when he is simply reading a surveillance log. The result is psychological paralysis. The shipwrecked lords become paranoid, hearing music in the air and seeing banquets vanish. Once the system achieves total visibility, physical chains become redundant. The subject's own paranoia becomes the guard. And when the surveillance fails to pacify, the master resorts to the spectacle. Prospero stages a masque, a grand, hollow, theatrical production filled with conjured goddesses and artificial light. While goddesses sing of earth's abundance and barns perpetually replenished, the actual inhabitants of the island are plotting, or starving, or enslaved. The spectacle is designed to occupy the eyes, so the mind stops asking who owns the ground they stand on. Prospero's command to Ferdinand, "Hush and be mute, or else our spell is marred," is the ultimate requirement of the administrative state. Silent, passive consumption. The moment the audience asks a question, the goddess vanishes and the hard wood of the stage is revealed. And beneath the spectacle, for those who remain restless, there is always the dream. While Prospero builds the walls, he allows the old counselor, Gonzalo, to build a castle in the air. Gonzalo's vision is a commonwealth where there is no sovereignty, no riches, no poverty, and no labor. The utopian fallacy serves a specific administrative function, harmless outlet for the idealism of the governed. Gonzalo dreams of a land without magistrates, while standing on an island where every inch of ground is governed by a man who can literally control the weather. Utopia is simply the sedative given to those that have no intention of being set free. The dream of the Commonwealth is the white noise that masks the sound of the chains. The control mechanisms are in place. What legitimizes them is a prior act of erasure. To build a clean system, you must first dispose of the previous occupant's ghost. Sycorax is the great omission. She is described exclusively through Prospero's mouth as a foul witch, a blue-eyed hag, a creature of unmitigable rage. There's no other witness, there's no other account, there's only the conqueror's summary, delivered to a child he has spent 12 years training to accept it. If Sycorax was a sovereign who ruled the island before him, then Prospero is a common usurper. To solve this, the administrative mind rebrands history as evil. The before must be made monstrous so that the now can be made mandatory. History, in the ledger of the sovereign, is merely the set of facts the master decided not to suppress. And of course, once the history is erased and the subjects are categorized, the island ceases to be a location. It's now a blueprint. Note how Prospero treats the terrain. To Caliban, we know the island is a living, breathing body with a memory. To Prospero, it is a resource map. Not trees, masts. Not landscapes, grids. This is the colonial gaze, the ability to look at sovereign territory and perceive only the raw material for a distant empire's ledger. To own a thing, you must first strip it of its spirit and replace it with a serial number. Prospero's power is the power of the inventory. He knows exactly how many logs Caliban has carried, exactly how many miles Ariel has flown, and exactly how many souls have washed up on his shore. Prospero is not alone in this, though the lords of Naples and Milan arrive already in possession of the consumptive gaze. From the moment they step onto the sand, they begin the process of mental appraisal, measuring the grass for potential grazing, assessing the air for the comfort of a future villa. When Sebastian and Antonio look at the landscape, they are building a spreadsheet. The otherness of the land is stripped away and replaced with a price tag. Even the shipwrecked begin to argue who would be the king of this patch of dirt, proving that the colonial mind cannot perceive a space without also perceiving a vacancy for a throne. Prospero's appetite extends beyond human subjects and territorial inventory. He brags of his ability to bedim the noontide sun, to call forth the mutinous winds, and to make the strong base promontory shake. This is the ultimate colonial arrogance. The belief that the planetary systems themselves are merely extensions of the administrative will. He hollows out the island's natural sovereignty to power a personal vendetta. He uses the island's own spirits to torment the island's own inhabitants. It is a closed-loop system of extraction where the land is exhausted to produce a political outcome for a man who plans to abandon it the moment he is finished. Prospero's art is a scorched earth policy dressed in verse. He leaves behind a wasteland and calls it a successful mission. In the final act, Prospero performs what the sentimental amongst us call forgiveness. Perhaps it's better described as a mercy maneuver. True power is the ability to destroy your enemies and choose not to, thereby placing them under a permanent, unpayable debt of gratitude. By forgiving the lords who betrayed him, Prospero achieves total psychological victory. He says, "The rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance." Translation: I am so much more powerful than you that your crimes are beneath my notice. He is integrating them into a new hierarchy where he is the ultimate arbiter of grace. The master grants the other their life, but only on the condition that they acknowledge the master's right to have taken it. And then, the famous gesture. He breaks his staff. He drowns his book, the abjuration. The instrument has simply been superseded by the institution. Prospero no longer needs magic because he has established quite successfully the system itself. The hierarchies are set, the marriages are arranged, and the other has been categorized and contained. He promises that in Milan, every third thought shall be my grave. He's completed the audit, filed the reports, and ensured that the world will run according to his syntax long after he is gone. The island is left behind, a decommissioned lab, while the master returns to the heart of the empire to oversee the fruits of his labor. The art is over, but the system, the grid of names, obligations, debts, and hierarchies he has so patiently constructed, endures without him. The analysis is finished. For now, this will do. Like Prospero in his final epilogue, I find myself on a bare stage, waiting for a release I have not quite earned and cannot quite request. The Duke at least had an audience he could see. He knew whose applause would free him. I am speaking to the void, and trusting on no particular evidence that something on the other side is paying attention. What I will say, and I mean this as a closing argument, not as a comfort, is that Prospero's Island is a blueprint. Every institution is an island. Every institution has its Calibans doing the necessary labor and being told it is punishment, its Ariels performing the delicate work and being told it is almost freedom, its Mirandas who have never been shown the door and therefore have concluded that the room is the world. And at the center of every institution, there is a man in a cell who believes that because he controls the weather, he understands it. I will leave you to locate yourself in that taxonomy without my assistance. And if the question of who manufactured the version of you that is currently sitting there occurs to you in the days ahead, good. That is the analysis working in your absence, which is, I will admit, more than I had any right to expect from either of us.